This is just a quick video to show you guys how to access the feedback on a discussion board. So what you're going to want to do is in Canvas, go to your grades. And I'm in a test student, so they have not submitted anything, but I did submit the sampling IRL discussion board. And you can see I have a grade, I have a little check mark showing that the grade is in there, and then I have a little cute rubric. So if I click on this, it shows me all the rubric results. So some of my discussion boards have a rubric like this. Most of them will. That way you can kind of see what I am expecting from you and what I grade on. So in this particular discussion board, I gave 6 points for just making sure you had met the required word count, that you submitted it on time, and that it was on task. So as the late student, I just did this so that I could show it to you. So my submission was late. So it is marked submitted late, and I lost 3 points. And then you can see the feedback and where I lost points. So in this particular student situation, I lost 2 points for my perfect scenario, I lost 4 points on my realistic scenario, and I lost 4 points on my limitations. So my 7 out of 20 is an abysmal score, but I want to point out that discussion boards to me are a formative assessment, and that means they are supposed to be an opportunity for you to get feedback, use that feedback to grow and strengthen your understanding of the material. So once I have feedback, you are then welcome to resubmit that discussion board. You'll do that as a reply. I'm going to turn off the ability to edit. The problem being, if you edit your original post, I don't see it as a resubmission and I won't know to regrade it. So you'll have to just reply to your own post with sort of your additions or a complete redo, whatever is easier for you. But this is where you can get your feedback on why I'm unhappy or why you lost points. And this is why it takes me sometimes a while to grade these, because I'm giving everybody the same amount of feedback, unless it's full marks, so then I don't give you feedback. So I just want to talk about some of the issues I've seen a lot in both the perfect scenario, the realistic scenario, and the limitations. Perfect scenario, my biggest issue here in general with this entire discussion board is that students really want to show off their vocabulary from part 1. And while I'm excited about that, I find that it tends to make more problems than it actually helps solve. So the one thing I've noticed a lot in the perfect scenario and even in the realistic scenario is referring to stratification as a sampling technique. So for this example, I had stolen Curran's post, and he had talked about stratifying based on major within MESA to then look at transfer goals. And so stratifying based on major is a realistic, is something that, not realistic, but it's something we could do in a perfect scenario, right? If I was the admissions office, people should have declared a major. Obviously, there is a small problem here in that not everybody has and that people will change majors, but this is something that the admissions office would have. But if I'm doing a stratification, I would then take a sample from each of those majors. So I would maybe say 10% of all the bio majors I'm going to talk to, 10% of all the rad tech majors I'm going to talk to. So I would make sure that I'm seeing everyone, because we know a biology, somebody who's getting an associates in biology is much more likely to transfer than somebody who's doing more of a career technical field like rad tech. They're probably going to be done and in the workforce afterwards and have no plans to transfer. So definitely something that would be an important thing to stratify on. So I agree with Curran's statement here. But you need to make sure that you're saying we take a sample. Now, a lot of people are saying stratify, but really what they mean is that there's just another variable that they think is interesting that they'd like to look at. So an example was I just saw a post about Disneyland, and it was like whether or not people are happy at Disneyland, right? Great. Easy. Happy. Our population is everybody at Disneyland, and I guess we were looking at a particular day as the population. Now we could have used that day as a sample. That would have been one method, but we're going to use that day as our population. And then there was this idea of let's stratify based on how often they come to Disneyland. Now, unlike this scenario here where I might actually have students' majors as an admissions officer, when people go to the park, they just scan a ticket. There's no way for me to know how often they're going. Now, I could stratify based on annual pass members versus not, or, based on the type of ticket they got, park hopper versus not, annual pass, all the different ticket options. That might be something reasonable to stratify on. Still a little bit hard because I don't know how many tickets there are going to be sold at the end of the day. So what am I going to just talk to? But it's fine. I could do an even number of each. I could say I'm going to talk to the first 10 annual pass, the first 10 of this. It's not as stratified because I'm talking to the first 10. It's just going to be a hard thing to get a hold of, right? Like, how would I know how many of each there are? Maybe it is possible based on, I don't know, finding those people in the park after the park at a certain time. I don't know. But I just want to make sure we're not conflating this idea of here's a variable I'm interested in and here's something I actually want to stratify on, like something that's going to be easy to divide people up into. And in your perfect scenario, there's really no reason to do stratified because in our perfect scenario, a simple random sample should work well. It's just can I actually get this list of people, right? If I'm Disneyland, maybe I do have a list of everyone who went into the park. If I'm me, a person who wants to talk to people at Disneyland, I'm not going to be able to get that list of people in the park. So I can't do a follow-up survey. So I'm going to have to stand at the park doors and maybe ask every 10th person as they leave how their day was. So there we go in terms of a slightly difference. That's the idea of realistic versus perfect. Is perfect, I have access to information about the population I'm interested in. And I think it was Nick. Maybe I'm making up your name. Can't remember. He did the Coronado residents and basically said, I have a list of every Coronado resident in my perfect scenario. Ding, ding, ding. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And in his realistic scenario said, I'm going to go to the white pages because as a human, that's all I have access to. And yes, exactly. So that's sort of what I'm thinking with perfect versus realistic. Perfect, I work for the company. I can get people's data. I work for the city, whatever it might be. Whereas realistic, I'm just me. And I can only do so much. Another thing about realistic is I'm really wanting us to start thinking towards what we're going to do for our project. So I want us to be very specific. So in Curran's example, if you go back to the discussion boards and look at the test students post, which is just his post reposted, he says exactly what I want. He says, I'm going to go talk to students in classes, and I'm going to go talk to students around campus. That's what you're going to do. A lot of groups are going to do for the project, but I want a little more specificity on that. Like, which classes are you going to go to? Are they going to be your classes? In which case, you're going to get students with similar majors to you. Are you going to be going to Mesa Commons when you go to ask people? In that case, you might be talking to just the people who don't bring their lunch or happen to be here during that time that you're planning on doing that sampling. Your limitations are going to be way, way more obvious the more specific you are about your realistic scenario. Even that great example with the white pages, there were missing limitations because not everyone is in the white pages. So I'm going to be leaving out a lot of people as a result of that. So anyways, I just wanted to point out those are some common errors. You are encouraged. I would love for you to resubmit once you get some feedback so that way I can regrade them. But again, I'm trying to train us towards this, like, what are we actually going to do for our project, and what are some of the issues that you might see when someone reports out some data, some statistics from some data of like, well, how did they actually go get that data? So just want you guys to start thinking in that way.